The champagne was still cool between my fingers when my phone started buzzing, slicing through what should have been the calmest evening of my life. For the first time in 30 years, I had nothing left to prove. I'd built an empire, sold it, and finally bought my dream home by the sea. But one call, my son's call, changed everything. "Hey, Mom," Brandon said, his voice soaked in that easy arrogance only people born into comfort seem to master. I should have known right then that peace wasn't in the cards for me. 24 hours later, I was standing in my own foyer, watching a line of strangers drag sand and suitcases across my imported marble floors as if they owned the place. My perfect sanctuary of the one I'd worked half a lifetime to afford was being taken over, and the invasion had just begun. Let me take you back to where this mess really started. 3 months ago, I sold Sterling Marketing Solutions, the company I had built from scratch with sleepless nights, heartbreak, and far too much coffee. 30 years of work turned into a wire transfer worth $2.8 million. After taxes, I still had enough to do exactly what I'd dreamed of since my first gray hair: buy a quiet beach house and vanish from the corporate world forever. The place was perfection. 6,000 square feet of weathered cedar and glass perched on the dunes, where sunlight spilled into every room. From the upper balcony, you could see the ocean stretch endlessly in every direction, blue, calm, and mine. I imagined family dinners, quiet mornings, the kind of holidays I'd always missed because of work. It was supposed to be my reward for a lifetime of sacrifice. I'd been in the house less than 8 hours when Brandon called. "No congratulations, Mom. No, the place looks amazing. Just business, always business." "Mom," he began, "Melissa's entire family is flying in tomorrow. Her parents, her sister, her brother, and his girlfriend, all of them. We'll need you to move upstairs to the guest room. They'll be using the master suite." I actually laughed out loud. "Brandon, sweetheart, this is my house. If you want to visit, we can plan some dates." "But I just moved in." He sighed as though I was being difficult. "You don't understand. Their flights are already booked. They're expecting to stay in the main bedrooms. The guest room upstairs has a great view. You'll be fine." For a second, I couldn't even find the words. This was the same son I'd paid through business school. The same man whose failed ventures I'd rescued. Twice. The one I helped buy a house when his graphic design company nearly went under. And now he was telling me to give up my master bedroom to his in-laws. "Brandon," I said carefully, "I bought this place to relax. Not to turn it into a hotel." His tone turned colder, sharper, a tone I remembered all too well from his father during our divorce. "Mom, come on. You've got this huge place all to yourself. It's selfish not to share it. And if you don't want to be reasonable..." He paused, his words deliberate. "I heard there's a really nice assisted living facility just down the coast." The threat hung between us like smoke after a fire. My 35-year-old son was warning me, "Obey or be abandoned again." "I see," I said softly. "And if I refuse?" He chuckled, a sound that made my stomach twist. "Then maybe it's time we talk about how much help you really need. Living alone, managing all that space. Maybe it's too much for someone your age." When the call ended, I stood on my new deck, the sunset painting the waves gold. It should have been the happiest evening of my life, but all I could think about was the smug tone of my son's voice. He thought he had me cornered, that I'd cave, like always. But what Brandon didn't know was that I hadn't built a multi-million-dollar company by giving in to bullies, even when they shared my last name. The best revenge isn't rage, it's patience. Letting your enemy believe they've already won. The next morning, I got up early to prepare for their arrival, but not the way they expected. I woke up the next morning to the sound of tires crunching over gravel and car doors slamming shut. They were early. Of course they were early. From my upstairs window, I watched a convoy of rental cars line my driveway. Out spilled Melissa's family, loud, confident, and acting like they'd arrived at their private resort. Melissa herself stepped out first, wearing oversized sunglasses and the smile of a woman used to getting her way. Her parents followed, decked out in those aggressively casual vacation outfits that scream, "We don't lift luggage, someone else does." Not a single one of them looked up at the house, wondering if they should knock first. They just walked in. I tied my robe tighter and headed downstairs, curious to see if they'd at least have the decency to look embarrassed when they met the actual owner. "Oh!" Melissa blinked when she saw me standing in the foyer. Mom! Brandon said you already moved upstairs. Good. The master suite has the best morning light. And my mom's knees are bad, so she really needs the ground floor bedroom. Her mother and father swept right past me without a single word, dragging their matching suitcases into my room, the one I'd barely had a chance to unpack. Behind them came her sister Rachel and her husband, shepherding two teenagers who immediately started racing each other up the stairs. Melissa's brother Kevin followed with his girlfriend, staking claim to the den and its pull-out sofa as though it were reserved for them. Coffee's in the kitchen, I said politely, still half in disbelief. Oh, we brought our own supplies, Melissa chirped, heading toward the pantry. Mom's on a special diet, and the kids are picky eaters. I'll just need you to clear some space in the fridge, and just like that, she began pulling out my neatly stacked groceries, piling them into a cardboard box as if she were firing an employee. I smiled faintly. Where should I put these? The garage fridge will be fine, she said absently. Brandon mentioned you had one. Of course he had. Apparently, he'd given them a full inventory of my property. I wondered what else he'd shared. The code to my security system, perhaps? By noon, my beach haven looked like a chaotic summer camp. Pool toys were scattered across the deck. Wet towels hung from antique chairs, and my once pristine kitchen resembled a battlefield. Melissa's mother had stationed herself at my dining table, complaining about the terrible water pressure, while her husband grumbled about my limited cable selection. Eleanor, her father shouted from across the room, "We'll need the Wi-Fi password. And do you have any of those little drink umbrellas? The kids want tropical smoothies." The entitlement was so stunning that it almost made me laugh. Instead, I simply handed him the password and walked out to the garage. I needed a quiet place to think and to make some calls. The first call was to Sarah Chen, my attorney, who had handled the house purchase. "Sarah," I said calmly, "pull the deed for my beach property. I need confirmation of the ownership details. Every clause." The second was to Jim, my accountant. "Remind me how we structured the ownership of the house," I asked, pretending to be casual. "I want to make sure everything's airtight." And finally, a call to Mike, a private investigator I'd used during a few corporate takeovers. "I need full background checks on some house guests," I told him. "Finances, employment, social media, the works. Yes, I'll pay the rush fee. By dinner time." While Melissa's clan was helping themselves to expensive steaks from my freezer, I had all the data I needed to start turning the tables. But it wasn't time yet. No, this game required patience. The more comfortable they got, the sweeter the payoff would be. That night, I lay in the small upstairs guest room, my new quarters. According to my daughter-in-law, listening to the muffled laughter and clinking glasses from downstairs. They were celebrating their victory. I was planning mine. The next morning, I woke to the sound of laughter, the kind that comes from people who've slept well in someone else's bed. My coffee maker was already in use when I got to the kitchen. A neat little line of Melissa's relatives waited their turn like guests at a hotel breakfast buffet. Her mother, Patricia, had completely taken over my countertops. Pans, bowls, and cutting boards were everywhere. "Oh, Eleanor," she said without even glancing up, "we're going to need you to run into town. Kevin's girlfriend can't have dairy, and Rachel's youngest is allergic to gluten or air, I'm not sure which. I made a list for you." She handed me a 3-page shopping list, color-coded like a military document. Notes in the margins read, "Organic coconut milk, the good. Kind gluten-free? Bread that doesn't taste like cardboard. Good luck. Avocados that are ripe but not too ripe." It took everything in me not to laugh. The sheer audacity was almost impressive. Instead of arguing, I smiled. "Of course, Patricia," I said sweetly, tucking the list into my bag. "I'll take care of it." What they didn't know was that I had my own errands to run. My first stop was the hardware store, where I picked up a few items that would come in handy later. Things like heavy-duty locks, a motion sensor, and a sign that read, "Private property, no trespassing." Then I drove to the phone company. "I'd like to make a few changes to my service plan," I told the representative. "Specifically, I want all my accounts under private authorization only. No secondary users, not even family." My final stop was the bank. The manager recognized me immediately. "Congratulations on your retirement, Mrs. Sterling," he said warmly. "Thank you," I replied. "Actually, I'm here to discuss some security updates on my accounts. I want to ensure no one else can make inquiries or withdrawals without my direct approval." He nodded. "Of course. Would you like to set up a password phrase? Oh, absolutely, I said. Let's make it something my son would never guess. Boundaries. By the time I returned, my car was stuffed with their specialty groceries. I half expected applause when I walked through the door. Instead, I found chaos, and again, Kevin had rearranged the living room furniture. For better TV angles, Rachel's kids had discovered my art, supplies, and decided the dining room wall was their new canvas. Melissa was out on the deck, sunbathing with a drink in hand, while Brandon's voice echoed through the house on speakerphone. Oh, good, you're back, Melissa said when she finally noticed me. We're planning a big barbecue tomorrow night. About 30 people, Brandon's friends, a few locals, some business contacts. You'll need to grab more steaks, burgers, hot dogs, sides, all that. I texted you the details. 30 people? I repeated slowly. Yes, she beamed. It'll be great exposure for the house. Brandon said you never host events, so this will finally put the place to good use. Exposure. That word stuck with me like a thorn. They weren't just using my house. They were turning it into their stage. Oh, and, she added casually, we moved some of your personal stuff out of the way. The photos, books, and whatever those old trophies were. They didn't fit the aesthetic. I bit my tongue so hard I tasted blood. My mother's antique vase? I asked evenly. Oh, don't worry, she chirped. It's safe in the closet. We wanted a more minimal look for the party. That evening, I watched from the shadows of my deck as they laughed, planned, and decorated, acting as though the house belonged to them. Brandon had promised them everything, and they believed it. They had no idea that every laugh, every smug little comment, was being noted, filed away for later use. When the sun went down, I slipped back into the garage with my phone. One by one, I began making more calls, not to lawyers or accountants this time, but to people who owed me favors. Big favors, Tom, I said when he picked up. It's Eleanor Sterling. I know I'm retired, but I need a favor. How quickly can your catering company handle a last-minute event? 30 people. Tomorrow night. Spare no expense. There was a pause, then a chuckle. That's short notice, Eleanor, but for you, consider it done. Excellent, I said. Just one thing. Make it extravagant. I want it to be a night they'll never forget. As I hung up, I looked around my garage, my sanctuary. The sound of their laughter drifted down from the deck above, oblivious and loud. Let them enjoy tonight, I thought. Let them believe they've taken over. Tomorrow the game changes. By the time the sun dipped below the ocean, the house had transformed into something unrecognizable. Fairy lights sparkled across the deck. Expensive wine bottles lined the bar, and music thumped softly from hidden speakers. Melissa flitted from guest to guest like a social butterfly, her designer dress shimmering in the warm glow. Her family was everywhere, laughing too loudly, posing for pictures, pretending the world revolved around them. And me? I was the ghost in my own home, standing quietly in the corner, watching the show. Mom, you could at least try to look happy, Melissa said, sweeping past me with a glass of champagne. This is a celebration. Everyone's so impressed with how beautiful the house is. You really should thank Brandon for making it happen. I smiled faintly. Oh, believe me, I said. I plan to. At precisely 7:30, the first catering truck pulled up. Then a second, then a third. Melissa frowned, glancing at me. Wait, did you double book someone? I didn't answer. Instead, I watched as uniformed staff flooded in, polished waiters, a professional bartender, a full-string quartet, even a private chef in his crisp white coat. Within minutes, the chaotic backyard looked like a scene from a luxury resort launch party. What on earth? Patricia began, clutching her pearls as servers replaced their paper plates with fine china. Relax, I said softly. It's just what your daughter wanted, a big, memorable event. The guests looked around in awe as the waiters began, serving trays of gourmet appetizers. Someone whispered, "Who paid for all this?" That's when I tapped my glass for attention. The crowd quieted and every eye turned toward me. Good evening, I began, my voice calm, steady. I'd like to thank you all for coming to this very special occasion. For those who don't know me, I'm Eleanor Sterling, the owner of this home. There was a ripple through the crowd. Melissa stiffened beside Brandon, her smile frozen. Yes, I continued. You heard that right, owner. Not hostess, not guest, not mom who moved upstairs. This house, every inch of it, belongs to me. A nervous laugh ran through the group. Brandon stepped forward, trying to smile it off. Mom, maybe now's not oh no, I interrupted smoothly. Now is perfect, I turned to the guests. You see, my son and his lovely wife here told everyone that this was their beach house. They even planned to host business partners here to impress them. And you all came to celebrate what exactly? A lie. Melissa's face drained of color. That's not... Eleanor, you're being dramatic. Am I? I said, raising an eyebrow. Because according to the deed, the property is owned by my trust, which means that any attempt to claim it or use it for personal profit would be considered fraud. Brandon's jaw tightened. You wouldn't? Oh, I would, I said, my voice sharp enough to cut glass. And I already have. The crowd murmured. Phones began recording. Melissa's perfect posture faltered. I turned toward the caterers. Everyone enjoy the evening. Dinner and drinks are fully covered. By me. Consider it my farewell gesture before I make some changes around here. Then I turned to Brandon and Melissa. As for you two, I'd suggest you start packing tonight. I'll have movers here in the morning. Patricia gasped. You can't just throw us out. I smiled. Actually, I can. Because I own the walls you're standing in, the bed you slept on, and even the glasses you're holding. And as of tomorrow, your welcome here expires. The silence that followed was delicious. Melissa's mother tried to speak, but her voice cracked. Brandon just stared at me, like a man seeing someone he'd underestimated one too many times. Finally, I stepped closer to my son, lowering my voice. You thought I'd just fade quietly into the background. But I didn't raise you to forget who taught you power. And now you'll remember. I handed him an envelope. Inside is a copy of the trust document. Take a good look, Brandon, because the next time you see me, it'll be in court, or not at all. Then I turned, nodded to the band, and the music resumed as if nothing had happened. Guests clapped awkwardly, unsure whether to stay or flee. I walked through the house one last time that night, letting my fingers brush the walls, my walls, while laughter turned to whispers behind me. Outside, the ocean roared softly, as if it were applauding. By sunrise, the house was silent again. The laughter, the music, the arrogance, all gone. What remained was only the sound of waves brushing against the shore, and the faint clinking of glass as the catering staff finished cleaning up. Melissa's family had packed in the dark. Patricia muttered something about ungrateful hosts, her husband dragging suitcases to the curb. Kevin and Rachel avoided my eyes entirely. And Melissa, perfect, polished Melissa, stood on the porch. Mascara streaked down her face, clutching Brandon's arm like it was the only thing keeping her upright. Eleanor, she whispered, voice trembling. You didn't have to humiliate us. I looked at her for a long moment. No, Melissa, I said softly. You did that to yourselves, Brandon. Tried one last time to speak reason, or maybe guilt. Mom, we were just trying to what? I cut him off. Claim something you didn't earn? Turn my retirement home into your playground? I built my life from nothing, Brandon, and I thought I'd taught you to do the same. But somewhere along the way, you learned to take instead of build. He dropped his gaze. I'm sorry. I sighed. Sorry doesn't pay for respect. You'll learn that soon enough. He hesitated, like he wanted to hug me, but Melissa tugged him toward the car. Come on, she hissed, and they drove away, fast, like the tide pulling back after a storm. For the first time in weeks, I walked through the house and felt stillness. The air was clean. The rooms were quiet. My reflection in the glass looked tired but alive. Brewed a cup of coffee and stepped out onto the deck. The sun rose over the water, washing everything in gold. It wasn't triumph I felt. It was peace. Revenge hadn't been about anger. It was about reclaiming my space, my dignity, my voice. Later that morning, my lawyer called. Eleanor, Sarah said, sounding amused, you've made quite an impression. Social media's buzzing about some mystery beach house matriarch who exposed her family at a party. I chuckled. Let them talk. Maybe they'll learn something, she laughed. What's next for you? I looked out at the ocean. I think, I said slowly, I'll turn the house into something useful. Maybe a writer's retreat, maybe a sanctuary for women starting over. People who've been underestimated, that sounds very you, Sarah said warmly. After we hung up, I opened my notebook, the one I hadn't touched since retiring, and wrote 3 words across a blank. Page, begin again. Eleanor, a week later. A letter arrived from Brandon. No excuses, no manipulation. Just a single line. I finally understand what you were trying to teach me. There was no return address. And I didn't need one. Some lessons take years to sink in. That evening, I poured a glass of wine. walked down to the edge of the water, and let the waves roll over my feet. The sky was streaked with fire and gold, and the house behind me glowed like a fortress reclaimed. For the first time in a long, long while, I felt like the woman I used to be, strong, smart, and unshakably free. I smiled to myself and whispered, "They thought they'd taken everything from me, but all they did was remind me who I am." The tide answered with a soft hiss, as if it agreed, and that was the real victory.